After a long hiatus, I welcome you all back to the final episode of The Hero's Path, the 7-part miniseries which covers the various journeys of Hyrule's most prominent characters on the day of the Great Calamity. With Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity now right around the corner, I think it's about high time we finish this series up with grace. If you haven't watched any of the previous episodes, I highly recommend you start by watching part 1 about Link and Zelda first, as that one sets the stage which all subsequent episodes build upon. Today we cover the most prominent member of the Hylian civilization, which is none other than the king himself, Rhoam Bosphoramus Hyrule. Now, unlike all the other characters we've covered so far, King Rhoam is the one we actually have the least amount of information for, both in terms of the game itself as well as creating a champion. The scenarios you find in this video are solely based on the little information we do have, environmental hints from the game itself, and the most prominent theories derived from it. Fittingly enough, my guest speaker for this final episode is none other than Zeltik, who first proposed a solid theory about the king's fate, which is still regarded as one of the most plausible scenarios to date. A link to that video will be in the description. Aside from that, this is also a collaboration, so make sure to head over to Zeltik's channel and check out his latest video. With that said, let's finish things up with a bang.
The story of Hyrule's monarch on the day of the Calamity begins at Hyrule Castle. While his daughter is on her pilgrimage to the Spring of Wisdom, King Rhoam himself awaits her return with hopes of good news in regards to unlocking her sacred power, a quest which, so far, remains fruitless. At Hyrule's capital, life continues as usual. Armed guards patrol the perimeter, goods are purchased and sold, politics discussed, and the Sheikah continue their research into the ancient relics in the courtyards of Hyrule Castle. However, around sunset, the peace is abruptly disturbed. A maelstrom of violent red clouds darken the air over the settlement, together with lightning bolts tearing through the skies above. And from the depths of Hyrule Castle itself, an ominous spectre arises, soaring around the peaks of Hyrule's royal home. After years of preparation and prophecy, the day of Ganon's return has finally arrived. Confident that the champions will adhere to their duties and make their way to the divine beasts as soon as possible, Rhoam orders his knights to get ready to fight alongside the Sheikah's technological wonders, as the royal guards prepare to defend their king with their lives. This is what they prepared for in the many years leading up to this moment. They are ready to subdue Calamity Ganon the same way that their ancestors from 10,000 years ago did so successfully in the past. But Ganon is cunning. What the leaders of the kingdom didn't account for was that the Calamity Ganon wasn't about to fall for the same trick twice, and instead has its own strategy in place to foil the Hylians' plan. With a deafening roar, the Demon King releases numerous strands of malice aimed at the very technology which was designed to suppress it. Before the Hylians and Sheikah realize what has just happened, their precious machines spring to life, eyes burning with the eerie glow of Ganon's hatred. In the blink of an eye, the thriving Hyrule Castle is turned into nothing more than a slaughterhouse, with guardians cutting down anything in their path without hesitation. 5 giant pillars, which were rumoured to reside somewhere in the depths below Hyrule Castle, yet had eluded the research teams despite vigorous excavations, rose up from the ground as if reacting to Ganon's presence, each one pouring out more guardians to do his bidding. But the cruel fate of Hyrule Castle, its guards, advisors, poets, and so many more, is only the beginning. From this point on, Ganon's newfound army is set on only one thing: destroying the Kingdom of Hyrule and everyone in it.
Unlike most of the characters we've covered so far, the fate of the last king of Hyrule is one that is in large part left up to our imaginations. The game itself never makes any suggestions as to his fate beyond the fact that he lost his life during the Calamity. Creating a champion does have some mentions, but the information itself can be quite contradictory. Some parts hint that he died as soon as the Guardians besieged Hyrule Castle. Other sections suggest that he may have survived at least until the Divine Beasts were taken over, which doesn't happen until later down the line. If the former turns out to be the case, that would mean the video ends right here. King Rhoam dies at the castle. The end. However, there are hints that Rhoam may have played a bigger role during this fateful day. The biggest clue we have that suggests the king's possible escape is the location of his grave on the Great Plateau, which in the actual in-game files can be found under the name Field Object King's Tomb A. If he did die at the castle, it's unlikely that his body would be found amidst all the chaos and patrolling guardians, not to mention carried all the way to this remote mountaintop. So let's sketch the most likely alternative scenario instead. If King Rhoam did indeed manage to escape from Hyrule Castle, there is a chance that this might be a playable section, where the king with a delegation of his best knights and royal guards fight their way out of the castle and into Castle Town, all the while trying to buy enough time for some of the civilians to escape the turmoil. Armed with his royal claymore, the king could fight his way from the castle onto the town square, and from there he will eventually make his way onto the fields of central Hyrule. Rhoam commands the lion's share of his army at Hyrule Castle to escort the surviving population through the East Gate and following the road towards Akkala Citadel. Meanwhile, he and his delegation set out for Hyrule Garrison. Since Link and Zelda entered the castle through the main gate, it's possible that they may have run into the king, and it was he who ordered his daughter to make her way to the safe haven that is Kakariko Village. In the meantime, Rhoam himself takes responsibility for the defense of central Hyrule and exits Castle Town, past the sacred grounds, Mabe Village, and towards Hyrule Garrison, the first true line of defense to the south of the castle. Unlike the Wrench, the Quarry and Mabe Village, which are mostly occupied by civilians, soldiers are stationed here. And it shows. The ruins of Hyrule Garrison are littered with dead and incapacitated guardians, indicating that the forces stationed here fought back valiantly. In war, even an inevitable defeat can still serve as a small victory, and the battle at Hyrule Garrison will prove to be an important one. This defense could serve as a gameplay section for the king since, if you remember from Link and Zelda's journey, an evacuation line was set up from the Hyrule Exchange, located right below Hyrule Garrison, all the way towards Hateno Village. It's highly likely that if Rhoam was indeed present at the defense of Hyrule Garrison, it was none other than him who ordered it. While he and the soldiers fight back the hordes of guardians rushing from the main capital, they buy the evacuees some time to get as many to safety as possible. The defense at Hyrule Garrison won't last for long, however. With more and more guardians pouring into the fields of central Hyrule, the stronghold will eventually be overrun, and the royal knights and guards under the command of their king will have to abandon their efforts and retreat back to the foot of the Great Plateau, and the many outposts located alongside it. Here, the defense of the evacuation line continues, and it's possible that this is an extension of the gameplay scenario mentioned earlier. But this effort too will do nothing more than buy some additional time. The sheer amount of guardians and their technological superiority can only be held back for so long. This defensive line too will eventually fall. The majority of the army stationed at the outposts will accompany the evacuees towards Necluda to ensure a safe passage. Meanwhile, Rhoam and the leftovers of Central Hyrule's army retreat further back onto the Great Plateau itself, and towards the Temple of Time and Eastern Abbey. The ruins of the Great Plateau reveal that its entrance, a grand staircase leading up to the plateau, has completely collapsed, and in the 100 years following the events of the Calamity, flooded with water, turning it into a small pond. Though it is never confirmed, many have speculated that the collapse of the entrance may have been the Hylians' doing, and even Creating a Champion makes a reference to this, stating that it's possible that the gate leading to the Great Plateau may have been blocked to hinder any further Guardian incursion.
The demolition of the plateau's grand staircase gives a clear insight into just how dire the situation was that day. Demolishing the only entrance to their most holy of sites, essentially cutting themselves off from the rest of the kingdom. Here, King Rhoam and his forces prepare to make their final stand against Ganon's central army. The soldiers station themselves at the Temple of Time, while a small subgroup of them get ready to defend the monks at the Eastern Abbey. At the Temple of Time, archers are stationed on the upper floor overseeing the fields below. Additionally, soldiers are stationed inside the 3 buildings in front of the temple to absorb the first wave of automata rushing in. If these structures are eventually overrun, the surviving forces will be able to retreat back up the staircase and into the main building. Given his importance as the monarch of Hyrule, King Rhoam himself is likely stationed inside the main building as well, under the protection of whatever is left of his royal guards. While the Hylians prepare for their final stand, Guardians claw their way up the walls of the Great Plateau. The destruction of the main entrance only bought them some extra time to prepare. Although we never see the Guardian Stalkers climb in the actual game, probably just for gameplay reasons, we know for a fact that they are able to ascend even the steepest of walls. This is evident from one of the first cutscenes in the game, the memory of 100 years ago told by the spirit of King Rhoam himself. Here we can see one of the machines scaling a church at a 90-degree angle. As the Guardians reach the top of the Great Plateau's walls, they rush towards the Temple of Time with no hesitation, as archers let loose volleys of arrows in an attempt to slow them down. The 3 frontal buildings are quickly overrun, though some of the soldiers stationed here did manage to take out some of the machines before retreating up to the main structure. Hordes of Guardians slam into the walls of the Temple of Time like waves on rock, attempting to claw their way up to reach the upper levels of the compound. The narrow entrance to the temple likely prevented the large-bodied Guardians easily accessing the inside. With the advantage of their elevation, the archers successfully managed to keep the machines at bay, who by this point are piling onto one another in a desperate attempt to scale the walls of this holy site. With more and more dead Guardians piling up, they'll need to find a way inside the structure sooner or later. The front of the temple has thick and sturdy walls, however the ruins of the Temple of Time reveal its greatest weakness, the eastern wall as well as its rooftop. It's possible that the Guardians circled around to the side of the building and concentrated their combined firepower on this section. Alternatively, Ganon could have even used one of the corrupted divine beasts, aiming its devastating laser at the temple and blasting away the eastern wall. With the temple now breached, the Guardians are now free to enter at will, wiping out the remaining survivors held up inside. Meanwhile, the Eastern Abbey has also come under siege, and although its ruins reveal a courageous defense, with many Guardian corpses littering its interior and exterior, the Abbey, too, is ultimately lost, along with its inhabitants.
So that's it, right? With the Guardians now having free reign over the Temple of Time, this undoubtedly signals the death of King Rhoam as well. Well, there is one additional piece of environmental storytelling which could hint towards one final desperation attempt to get Rhoam to safety. Remember, this is the King of Hyrule we're talking about. The soldiers and guards of the kingdom are tasked to protect His Majesty's life at all cost. It's possible that when the temple was breached from the east side, the king and some of his guards snuck out through the main entrance to flee towards the mountains to the west. The reason why this might be the case is because alongside the River of the Dead, close to the bridge crossing into the mountains, we find 2 additional dead Guardians lying in front of what seems to be the ruins of a gate. There's no reason for Guardians to be present here, since there are no other Hylian strongholds or settlements situated in this area of the plateau. Nothing beyond the Temple of Time and Eastern Abbey. This could very well be the exact location where the king ultimately met his demise. They fled towards the mountains from the Temple of Time until they were finally cut down by pursuing Guardians, taking 2 of them out in a last effort to save their beloved king. This could explain why Rhoam's grave is located on the top of Mount Hylia as opposed to closer to the Temple of Time. Whoever discovered his body here in the snowy fields may have decided to carry him across the bridge and up to Mount Hylia and make this his final resting place. The death of the king and the many soldiers and guards who stood their ground at the Great Plateau officially marked the fall of Central Hyrule. Considering the odds against them, they still managed to put up a fight worth remembering. Aside from Akkala Citadel and Fort Hateno, the Temple of Time and its surrounding area houses one of the greatest numbers of dead Guardians in the entire kingdom, a true testament to their valiant efforts. Even in death, the King of Hyrule was not at ease, not until he made sure that his kingdom would one day see its revenge on the scourge of Hyrule Castle. His daughter Zelda, who sealed herself inside the walls of his former home, requests him to watch over the plateau in her absence to relay an important message when the time comes. Unable to rest, the king's spirit will wander the ruins of the deserted battlefield that is the Great Plateau, waiting for a blue-eyed young man to one day step back into the sunlight.